So what would your thoughts be on that kind of weaponization of your holy scriptures, completely devoid of the context of your holy scriptures?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I see that, right, that sort of underlies so much of our discourse when it comes to the religious voice in the public sphere, right? We're sort of throwing these things back at each other, and I think one of the interesting things that is not as well understood is that, right, on the one hand, it's like it's a shared text, right? Judaism looks at the Tanakh, and Christians have the Old Testament. There's overlap. The books are very similar. I tend to think of them as different, but yet the same in a way. And that we have we have a specific way of reading our texts in that way. And I think that sometimes when that's raised up, that it kind of ignores this Jewish interpretive tradition that we have a particular way of reading the text, and Christianity does as well. That's just different than the way Judaism reads it, and I think that sometimes is lost, right? So you see, like for example, like the you mentioned the Jeremiah text, which within the Jewish context doesn't really apply to reproductive justice. It's not like a text that we use or read in that. It means something else, right? It has to do more with the the prophetic imagination, and just so that the tale of Jeremiah's anointment as prophet, and it's not a text that we would read to bring to bear on those issues, whereas other texts that we see within the Tanakh or in the Torah are, for example, in Exodus, one of the primary texts that we read that informs our approach to reproductive justice is a kind of very esoteric legal text in Exodus, where it talks about if people are fighting and they knock into a pregnant woman who then miscarries, right? Then the fighters or whoever caused the accident has to pay restitution, a fine. But if throughout that tussle, if the woman happens to die as well, then that person is charged with a capital offense. Right, so it's seemingly sort of a narrow, esoteric legal text. But what that does in the Jewish community or in the Jewish reading of text is, because of that distinction, right? Because of that nuance, where if she just loses the pregnancy, a fine is paid, but if the mother dies as well, then it's a capital crime. Then how Jewish tradition reads that is, well, the Torah in this case is making a distinction between a fetus and a full human being. And that then leads on to how we understand the text. And it's interesting, I've made videos about that as well, and taught that in public forums, and people have argued with me about how the text is read. And I'm like, no, that's not how, like, I'm reading the text in a very specific Jewish way, and you're reading it maybe in a different way. But I don't think it's possible to read the Torah without, the context of the Talmud and Jewish tradition. And so it kind of ignores this legitimate reading of text and tradition that I think especially proves the point that we have a multiplicity of spiritual voices in the public sphere, and we have to respect them all. And when it's just dismissed, as you say, it's problematic, because there are different ways of reading the text, and we have to kind of see that. And it's not, and I think we need to make space for that.